Warning. The system has become unstable.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. I've been purchasing gold and silver from JM Bullion since before they were a show sponsor because they have the lowest price of any dealer I know of. JM Bullion now offers free shipping on all orders, and Prepper Recon listeners will get $5 off any order over $300. Just go to jmbullion.com and use coupon code PR5 at checkout. Today's guest is Shane Trejo of offnow.org. Shane, thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you on the show. Now, can you tell us what offnow.org is?
Well, we're a decentralized grassroots coalition of organizations from across the political spectrum, and we're working to deny compliance and material support to the NSA. And we have our legislation, the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, that would cut off the NSA from using our water and our natural resources. They use millions of gallons of water per day to cool the vast network of computers at their facilities in places like Utah, Maryland, Texas, Hawaii, and several other states. And they usually get this water from local and state governments, and they get a sweetheart deal to take it. And we can stop these deals cold with our legislation. And our legislation also stops illegally gathered information by the NSA from being used in a criminal prosecution. It also stops university involvement with the NSA and allows for the punishment of corporations who are in bed with the NSA in the state as well. So it's a very comprehensive way of pushing back against the NSA at the state level. And we also have a local resolution as well that you can take into your local government, and that can spur state action a lot of the time.
Wow, that's awesome, and I think it's a great concept. That was kind of a lot of information right there, but what we'll probably do is through the interview go through and get into a little more detail on each one of those things that you outlined right now. Now, what motivated you personally to get involved with offnow.org?
Well, I was involved with the 10th Amendment Center. We work to support nullification bills across the country on a wide variety of issues like to stop drones, stop Obamacare, the NDAA, gun control, and so on. And offnow.org is a coalition organized by the 10th Amendment Center and the Bill of Rights Defense Committee. So when I was offered the job as national campaign lead for this new idea, this new coalition, I jumped on it immediately. Very happy to be involved, and especially considering after the Snowden revelations, the NSA they've now been proven to be liars and Constitution violators. So I think the time is right now. The time is now for us to push back against the NSA. And I think the idea seems to be catching the public, and they seem to be reacting to it pretty well. And we've gotten a lot of good news reports from a wide variety of news outlets. We've got groups from the left and groups from the right joining our coalition. So it's really a bipartisan thing, and that's what I really like about it, is that it's really we're forcing our way through this ridiculous manufactured partisan divide that's really plagued our political sphere in recent years. It's really bringing people together on a civil liberties issue. It's uniting people on what's right, on basic constitutional protections, and we need more of that if we're going to have a chance of keeping freedom in the republic.
Absolutely, and thank you for all your work that you're doing. Now, what part of the country are you from?
I'm from Michigan, near Detroit. It's not in the best situation it could possibly be in, but we're improving, and hopefully we can turn it around here.
But maybe one of the positive things about Detroit is it's sort of a little microcosm of America, and government was very involved up there, and I think we've seen sort of some of the failures of government and what happens when you get a local government spending too much money and making too many promises and writing checks that they can't cash. So, maybe it would be a good wake-up call if America would pay a little bit more attention to what's going on there, and they can sort of see it's sort of a crystal ball for America, isn't it?
Yeah, and unfortunately, Detroit's getting bailed out. I believe they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars poured in from the state so they can, pace off some of these unpayable debts they have accumulated. So I don't think the precedent's going to be set for fiscal restraint. I don't think the precedent's going to be set for improving our situation. It seems like they're increasing government power in Detroit. They're spending more money to bail these guys out. So I think as our problems get worse and as more countries go or more cities go belly up like Detroit, we're just gonna see more debt being created, and the politicians are just gonna really double down on their failure to this point. And the only way we're ever gonna turn things around is it's by free individuals coming up with ideas themselves. And we have seen that in Detroit a little bit. There is some independent entrepreneurial activity going on down there that's interesting, and there's also a kind of a push to get back to farming and self-sufficiency. So if anything is going to save Detroit, it's going to be that. It's not going to be the politicians. They're just going to keep throwing the debt around until we're completely flat broke.
And then I think the typical high priority 911 response time in Detroit's around 58 minutes. So are the governments is the local government in Detroit starting to wake up to their inability to actually defend the public? Are they being a little bit more constitutional in their viewpoints of allowing people to defend themselves?
Well, yes and no. Since Detroit's bankruptcy, there was an announcement some weeks back that they were going to start stop and frisk policies, similar to the New York City law, where basically cops can just shake down anyone, usually minorities or attractive women, harass them, grope them, and then if they have a small amount of marijuana on them, they're arrested. So they're gonna try to bring that into Detroit now that they're bankrupt, I guess, as a way to collect revenues. But at the same time, we did see the police chief come out and say, hey, citizens need to be armed. We can't get there. We can't help people. People need to, basically take their defense into their own hands. So there are some people waking up and showing some common sense, but at the same time, there's just as many people from the opposite point of view where they're seeing these crises as a way for them to get even more power and for them to cement state power in the aftermath of all these bankruptcy and debt everywhere.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are okay with stop and frisk as long as it's that kid that can't pull his pants up. But when it becomes you, and it gets personal, then those same people that support the ideology, they often don't like it, do they?
No, and more and more, your average person is seeing it encroach into their lives, and whereas before, they could just see it as someone who's a minority, someone someone in the inner city, maybe getting these, the brunt of these drug laws, or these, civil liberties violating stop and frisk type laws. But now it's coming for everyone. The public realize that the government's the big threat, and they're more willing to accept, things like ideas like what we're pushing it off now, more so than they were, in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, for example.
So the inner city people just sort of made a good test group to be able to test out that new product of stop and frisk and figure out how to get a section of the society to become more compliant, and now they can just take it to the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like a
product development.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a beta test. They knew they could get away with it if they did it to the minorities, the poor people who aren't typically listened to, or they don't have a high profile in society. Yeah, they could get away with, violating their rights. And now they've been doing it for decades, and, they've killed the inner cities and they've turned the slums and ghettos, and now they're going to do that to the rest of us. Now they got that ready for all of our rights to be violated, for all of us to be spied on, to be snooped upon, and it's only going to get worse unless, of course, we get involved at the state and local levels to push back against it.
And now, don't we need the NSA to keep us safe, or do you think this term terrorism is just sort of a boogeyman to scare us all into being more compliant?
Well, it's obvious the government uses the terror threat, at least a little bit, to get people to surrender their freedoms and accept the limitless growth of federal power. After 9/11, they've been to how many? A dozen wars, depending on how you define war. Would have the public accepted that if there wasn't, this terror threat? Probably not. But it is debatable though whether we need the NSA to keep us safe or not. Our plan off now does not shut down the NSA. It really just forces them to economize and use their resources more appropriately. Right now they spend way too much of their time focusing on law-abiding citizens and collecting the data of people who probably never violated a crime in their lives. We feel that the time should be spent by the NSA, and all of our resources that they're taking from us should be spent going after the real terror threats. And by denying them the vast amount of resources that they need to spy on us all, not only do we help the environment by preventing the waste of these resources, but we also force the NSA to use their time wisely. And they've shown no willingness to clean up their act on their own, and that's why we need to step in and kind of twist their arms and say, hey, this is not all right. You can't spy on us. You can't destroy our Fourth Amendment. Now actually get out there and try to protect us from these terror threats. Focus on the terror threats, not on law-abiding American citizens.
Now, what can you tell us about this new NSA Data Center they're building out in Utah? Isn't that just essentially like a flash drive the size of JFK Airport?
Yeah, it's the size of several Pentagons, and it's located in the middle of the desert in Bluffdale, Utah. Sucks up 1.7 million gallons of water per day. And they have a bunch of data hubs all across the country. This is the granddaddy of them all. And it's really the facility that's going to allow them to destroy the anonymity and the privacy rights of all human beings forever, which is what Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who reported the Snowden links, said that is the ultimate goal of the NSA. And the Utah facility is going to really give them the ability to do that. Once it gets off the ground, once they get all the kinks worked out, haven't gotten it completely ready to go. They haven't gotten all the kinks worked out yet. That's why it's so important for us to act fast and act now, so that we can cut them off before they, get this, horrible 1984 style surveillance system completely ready to go.
And then you've mentioned that there's some common sense things that you could do to disrupt that center out there, and you're going to use your Fourth Amendment Protection Act to reach that goal.
Yes, we actually have the legislation that's been introduced. Two pieces of legislation that are very important. One is HB 161, and that is the legislation that would basically shut down the Utah Data Center. That would cut them off. That's our Fourth Amendment Protection Act. And also introduced is HB 128, which is a bill to ban the warrantless use of data in state court. And it would prohibit law enforcement from obtaining location information of cell phones without a warrant. And that's already passed through the House. So, and then those are two very important bills that would, one would, more holistic, our Fourth Amendment Protection Act, the HB 161, would stop them cold, but the HB 128, would, at the same time give some protections to Utah citizens from, law enforcement and other groups that don't really, feel like, getting a warrant, won't get one unless they're mandated to. So that would at least protect some of your information, from being, spied upon and used without a warrant by law enforcement.
And then you were talking about that you used to work for the 10th Amendment Center earlier, and now is that still publicly recognized amendment? Because it seems to me that the federal government's just ran all over the states' rights, and they're just all basically subservient to the federal government. Is there something that Utah could do? Would they be allowed legally to turn off the water for the NSA Data Center?
Yes, because what we're doing with the Fourth Amendment Protection Act isn't really nullification. It's something known as the AntiCommandeering. And according to this AntiCommandeering doctrine, it says that the federal government cannot force the states to act against their will under any circumstances. And this has been repeatedly affirmed by the Supreme Court. And this is why the feds are always, offering them debt money to do this, with strings attached. And unfortunately, the states are usually willing to take it. But that's what we're working to change. We're trying to make it so that the states aren't the lapdogs of the federal government anymore, that they perform a check and balance against the federal power growing too out of control. And that's what anti-commandeering is all about. And it works very well at stopping the NSA because what they're trying to pull off is so vast that it's unworkable without state compliance and material support. And we can pull that away constitutionally. They would have to scale things back a great deal. And that's, very, it's legally valid. It's not a controversial notion, this anti-commandeering doctrine. It's by all, it's been affirmed and reaffirmed over and over again, and that's the legal basis, the sound legal basis that the Fourth Amendment Protection Act operates under.
And now, is the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, is that just for Utah, or can all of us push our state legislators to pass a similar bill in our respective states?
Yes, it works for every different state. We have model legislation available on our website. You can take it off of our website and lobby your representatives to introduce it. It's ready-made. All you have to do is fill in the information that's specific to your state. And we have more detailed action steps available on our action website, which is offnow.org/state. And that gives you really the things you need to do to get this campaign going in your state. It also shows all the states that have currently introduced legislation, either our Fourth Amendment Protection Act or something that protects metadata or forces the government to get warrants before using your data. And, we've already got them introduced in several different states. And we got a nice map up there on our offnow.org/state website that shows exactly all the states that have introduced something and shows you and tells you exactly how you can get involved to either get this going in your state or make sure that the bills that are already been introduced are passed.
And then you also mentioned that the Fourth Amendment Protection Act would also ban states and local law enforcement from being able to utilize the information that was passed to them from the NSA. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. And this is very important because this is the way that the NSA brings aboard local law enforcement onto their, basically unconstitutional scheme. They say, oh, well, we're going to help you. We're going to get you information so you can make drug arrests and to aid you in criminal prosecutions. We're also going to talk to you and feed you information about people who are terrorists and work with you and through fusion centers. And, it's all really this kind of incestuous system where everyone's constitutional rights are being violated and every level of government's being brought in on it. And that's highly problematic. And even in a place where, and this is why the Fourth Amendment Protection Act is so important, it's even in a place where there's no data hub, where the NSA doesn't have a giant spying center, they're still involved in this information sharing environment where, information's being shared from the NSA to your local law enforcement, to fusion centers, back to federal bureaucracies, and this would stop that. And that would be a really big thing, and especially in terms of stopping the local law enforcement from being federalized. That's a big problem we're seeing across the country. It would ensure the independence of your, local and state law enforcement so that they're not, in the back pocket of the federal government and they're not being, influenced by the NSA, the proven liars, the proven charlatans at the NSA, they're not influencing your local government. So your local government and your state government, your law enforcement are more likely to serve you and not serve, the lying feds.
And Shane, offnow.org has identified 5 different fronts that we can fight against the NSA. You touched on those at the very opening of the interview, but can you go over those again and give us a little more detail on those?
Well, yes, and James Madison advised that, the father of the Constitution, that obstructions which the federal government would hardly be willing to encounter. And this means that when he was talking about state and local resistance, that there are obstructions that you can take that would basically put the brakes on the feds, whether they were trying to introduce something that's illicit or unpopular. There are ways you can fight back, and here are our successful our campaign against the NSA. Hits these 5 areas. The first being state legislation, as I've mentioned, our Fourth Amendment Protection Act. We also have our Fourth Amendment Protection Resolution, which would, be a stern rebuke against the NSA if you pass it in your, city or county, and it would call upon the state to pass the Fourth Amendment Protection Act. This is how we've gotten nullification bills through in many states. It's how we've, built coalitions in many states as well. So the local resolutions are very important. They also wake people up to the full threat that we're faced with against not just the NSA, but the whole federal government. And the third step is corporate protests. So, and again, right now we're focusing on 1 and 2. That's what we've got thus far. We're having a lot of success on that. But we have 3 other things that we want to bring to light. So we want to single out corporations that are helping the NSA, and we want to protest them. And there's many of them, many unscrupulous, corporate interests out there who are, happy to take federal money to help the NSA destroy our rights. This includes utilities companies, defense contractors, hotel operators, and others. And, these companies, need to be boycotted. They need to be called out for what they're doing, and they will back off. And if there's enough public outrage, directed at them, they'll say, "Hey, we'll get our money through, honest commerce rather than, sucking federal money to destroy the Constitution." And our fourth front is campus actions. This would involve protests against NSA and university partnerships, and organizational and student government resolutions formally calling for an end to such partnerships. And this is because we have to hit the university angle, because the NSA is influencing our universities as well. They have a program called the Centers for Academic Excellence, and this program takes schools, basically bribes them with cash and scholarships and grant opportunities. They then come in, they train students and faculty to do crucial research tasks that help the NSA spy on us all. Then they later come back and recruit the top talent from the university to come and work for them. And it's very problematic for a wide variety of reasons. And it's really a backdoor way that the NSA utilizes their influence over us. So now everyone knows that they're spying on us. Everyone knows that they're liars, but they don't know exactly, how all their tentacles are affecting our lives in so many different ways. And, the university aspect of it, they're basically, brainwashing our kids into accepting this illegal, pervasive surveillance grid is necessary. And they're taking, top talent who could go, say they could someone who could cure a disease or otherwise serve humanity. Where are they going to go? They're not going to go do that. No, they're going to be sucked up by the NSA to go spy on us. So it really is disgusting, and that's something that we are focusing on. We're working on building a campus presence as well, in addition to the legislation we've gotten passed, and also in our fifth front is the environmental concerns, the waste. They're not just wasting the water, but they're burning a lot of coal to provide the power for all these data hubs. So there's really a bunch. It's really onerous for a wide variety of reasons. And these 5 are just the 5 fronts that we're hitting. And, there's really an angle that I think can win over anyone and make sure that it bring anyone on board against the NSA, because there's really no defense for what the NSA is doing.
And we do. We need everybody to get involved, because it's not going to happen without the public standing up and saying we're not going to do this anymore. Which is sort of like, that's sort of what happened in the 60s with the civil rights movement. Now, what did Rosa Parks do that was so monumental in the fight for civil rights? Did she form a militia, or did she run for public office? How did she manage to inspire so many people?
Really, just by saying no to injustice, refusing to move. That's how she set the example. She just said no to the evil, oppressive government policies that were being, enforced upon her. And really, nonviolence and civil disobedience makes all the difference. The federal government, they have all the bombs, and they have the willingness to use them. They have the biggest guns. Their whole operation is based around violence. And that's their domain. But by being nonviolent and refusing to comply with those thugs, that's how we fight back and beat them. It's been proven over and over again by Rosa Parks, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and so on. And that's the blueprint for fighting back against injustice and tyranny, is just by saying no, by being nonviolent, by being disobedient to these laws, and delegitimizing all these ridiculous laws that are being used to, destroy our freedoms and, ruin our privacy forever. So we're just taking Rosa Parks' example and applying it to legislation at the state level, to stop these types of heinous injustices.
And another thing I think she did is she made a conscious decision in her heart that she wasn't going to be afraid anymore. Just saying, do what you have to do to me, but I'm not going to be bullied anymore into having to submit to a rule that's completely illegal, and making one person sit at one part of the bus because of the color of their skin is completely, while it might be a rule on the bus, because it's unconstitutional, means that it's an illegal rule. So, and then we're facing the same things with a lot of our infringements. They're completely unconstitutional, and just because somebody has a badge and a gun doesn't make them legal.
Yeah, exactly. People need to understand that, just because you have a badge and a gun doesn't mean that you should be, basically obeyed at all, in all circumstances. The stormtroopers in Nazi Germany, they had nice uniforms. They had guns, they had badges, and unfortunately the people there obeyed them. They thought they were free there. Just like we think we're free now, but it's not really the case. And we need an epidemic of courage to overtake the country, and for people to, just realize they got nothing to lose. They got nothing to lose by standing up. And the federal government wants people to know that they're being spied on. They want people to be intimidated into silence, because right now they are vulnerable. They are losing power. And now is when people need to have the courage to stand up and to fight them before they can amass all this information and learn how to use it, learn how to gain power through it. We're in kind of a critical juncture right now where we can still stop them because they haven't gotten things in the full gear. But if we don't take this moment right now and act upon it, we could be dealing with a situation where the government has accumulated so much power that resistance is futile. We're not at that point yet, but right now is the time that we have to stand up. We have to do something about this. We have to at least make them draw back on what they're trying to do, because if we don't, then we could be looking at a horrible, beyond belief scenario coming up in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I think that Nazi Germany analogy was right on point, because they didn't go from being completely free to being loaded into cattle cars in a week. It was over a course of several years that it was drawn out, where they would have one miner and coach encroachment after the other, and they kept saying, well, that's not so bad. Well, that's not so bad. Well, and then by the time they're getting loaded onto the cattle cars, they've just been completely conditioned to just comply with whatever they're told to do, because they never stood up and said anything before that.
Exactly, and there's a great quote from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was from Soviet Russia. He's a Peace Prize winner, and he survived the Soviet tyranny and spent time in the Gulag. And he said that if we'd have just fought back, if we would have just realized we had nothing to lose, and even just had people with rocks and knives waiting for these these jackbooted thugs to fight them, rather than just being marshaled off into the camps into hell. And if we'd have just known, if they'd have just known what was happening and realized they had nothing to lose, then everything would have fallen apart. No matter what Stalin's bloodlust was, it wouldn't have mattered, because all the officers would have realized, I might not come home to my family tomorrow if I go through with this. There might be something that happens to me. I might be, beaten by, the people who are resisting, and they wouldn't have followed the orders. But the problem was that, so the people in Russia didn't know what they were up against. The people in Germany didn't know what they're up against. And the problem with the American public is they don't know how badly the tyranny has metastasized, how much they're up against, and they don't really think that, the prosperity's always going to be here, their freedom's always going to be here. They take it for granted, and a lot of them don't realize they've already lost it, and that they need to be fighting to get it back, and fighting to really just to keep the republic from not falling to pieces.
Yeah, because people don't want to believe that about their government. Yeah, and like you said, it would have been had they known what was coming, they could have easily overpowered the Russians. And the same thing in Germany. There's pictures of just masses of people being loaded onto cattle cars, and there'll be 2 armed guards standing there. One with just a sidearm pistol, and the other one with a rifle. And it would have been so easy to overpower those 2 guys by the 20 or 30 people you see getting loaded into each car. And like you said, up until their death, they think they're going in to get a shower, and it's not a shower; it's a gas chamber, and they've just been and they keep hoping for the best. They keep thinking, well, we'll just get through this and we'll be free and everything will get back to normal, and it doesn't. It gets worse and worse and worse the more you tolerate. You're not going to tolerate somebody into being nicer to you. The more you put up with the bully, the bigger bully he's going to get to be. Isn't that right?
Exactly. And it's a cognitive bias called the normalcy bias, where people, for whatever reason, they, no matter how bad their surroundings get, there's some bias in their head that just convinces them that everything's normal, that everything's going to be okay. And throughout time, especially in the 20th century, when communism took hold, so many different countries slaughtered millions of their own people in non-war time. So this isn't countries fall into tyranny and people and tons of citizens getting killed. That's not a rare occurrence. Happens all the time. And Americans, again, they haven't been subjected to quality information. Their perspective many times is completely unaligned with reality. They don't understand that their country isn't this giant monolith that is going to be free and going to be number one forever. That's not the case. I mean, that's already fallen, and now we're dealing with the aftermath of it all, where the Constitution's been ripped to shreds. The debt level is so astronomical, it's hard to believe. And, you look at the headlines of the news every day, you see the
panda bears.
Rot. What was that?
Panda bears. That's the headlines. They're usually telling you about a baby panda bear or who won on, American Idol last week, or, how many times Justin Bieber got locked up this week, and, what crazy stunts Miley Cyrus up to this week. So those are the headlines.
Exactly. And the good news though is that with the internet, people have options at least. There's competitors to the establishment media. There's competitors for people who are influencing others. So now it's not the way it used to be where everyone gets their information from one newsreader on one corporate television network, or everyone gets their opinions from the New York Times, and then everyone has there's no options but to regurgitate the things that you're hearing in the academia. So now those kind of monolithic institutions are being challenged and competed with. So that's a good thing for us. And no matter, how much propaganda they spew on CNN or, the Washington Post or New York Times, they're going broke. They're not getting the viewers they used to get. They're becoming obsolete in the internet age. And I think the more we work, the more we get the word out, the more we fight back through, nullification initiatives that aren't necessarily approved by the academic elites, aren't necessarily approved by the, New York Times editors, but who cares? They're irrelevant. We're moving forward without them, and we can fix things still, and they're only gonna they're only gonna prove that they are, a tool of the government. They're only gonna prove that they are propaganda mills as they become more relevant and send more people our way, because all you need is a modem to get the real information. For now.
So get it while you can, because that may not be true 5 years from now. If we don't reverse this trend now, you may not have anything except the corporate and state-run sponsored media outlets. So get educated now while you still can. Shane, thanks so much for coming on this show. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've really given us a lot of great stuff to think about and a lot of good action steps for folks to get out there and get involved and start doing things and start educating themselves about what's happening to their freedom and start educating themselves about what is the law of the land, because the law of the land is the Constitution, and any laws that are written that go against that are illegal laws. So you're not bound by those at all. Just like Rosa Parks wasn't bound to sit in a certain section of the bus because of her skin color, because that was a completely unconstitutional law. So get educated, learn the Constitution. That's a great thing. That's a real good first step, because a lot of folks have no idea what it is. And go over to Shane's website and check that out and get involved. And we're going to have links to Off Now in the show notes today. But for the folks listening on Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube, Shane, can you tell them where they can find that?
All right, please go to offnow.org/state, and that website will give you all the up-to-date information on all the bills that we've introduced, that have been introduced throughout the country, and how you can take action to either help get those bills passed or to get a movement going in your state to get the bill introduced. So the website again is offnow.org/state. Please go there, and it was great to be on your podcast.
Absolutely, it was great to have you. Now, what about Facebook? Are you guys on Facebook?
Yes, on Facebook we are Nulify NSA. So yeah, just go into Facebook search and type in Nulify NSA, and we'll come up. And please like us on there and share our posts.
Awesome. Thanks again. Hey Preppers and Patriots, American Meltdown, the long-awaited sequel to American Exit Strategy, is now available in Kindle and paperback. In American Meltdown, Book 2 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles, the new president, Anthony Howe, signs an executive order banning all semi-automatic weapons. Matt, Adam, and Wesley Baer begin training with their local militia for the battle that is coming. Within weeks of the inauguration, the $700 trillion derivatives bubble pops when rates on U.S. debt skyrocket. The derivatives crisis is the final nail in the coffin of the banking system and the death of the fiat currency system in America. With the dollar gone, commerce comes to a screeching halt. While times prove to be tough for all, survival favors the prepared. Get your Kindle or paperback copy of American Meltdown, Book 2 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles on Amazon today.